Hello, my name's Stuart Scott, and I'm going to take you on a magical voyage of discovery through the streets of London. Now, this project's had a lot of assistance, and hopefully I've remembered everyone's name in the end credits, but there's one person I really need to single out and thank, and that's Bob Reed. Bob Reed is the man who drafted this, which is Bob Reed's Magical London. It's a collection of magical walking tours through London, and he drafted this in 2005 to celebrate the centenary of the Magic Circle. So this video is dedicated to Bob. This is Bob Reed's Magical London Walking Tours booklet, or An Idler's Guide to the Magical Capital of the World. It contains a collection of 6 walking tours covering over 150 sites, buildings, places, and people of interest to magical historians, magic collectors, magic visitors, and magicians who simply enjoy Sunday afternoon goofing around. As well as magic, it touches on ventriloquism, automata, juggling acts, and many other related arts. Bob did the research and devised the walks back in 2005 for the centenary of the Magic Circle. A little while back, I spoke with a couple of magician friends of mine, Jonathan Allen and Charlie Burgess, about the possibility of taking one of these walking tours. I've actually taken a few of these walks in the past with my friend, the Russian magic historian Andrei Fedorov. But clearly now, in the midst of the coronavirus, none of us are going anywhere. And on top of that, the Magic Circle has had to postpone the 2020 Magic History Day that was due to take place in June. So in light of all this, and with the coronavirus going on everything, I thought it might be a little bit of fun, and in the spirit of Bob's walking tour, goofing around on a Sunday afternoon, to actually try and do one of these walking tours, but completely virtually from my own living room. So the start point, I guess, is who was Bob Reed? Bob Reed, who devised these walks, was a British stand-up magician known for, amongst other things, producing wine bottles and doing a hilarious knife-through-coat routine. He turned to magic late in life after a successful career in the wool industry and had a strong interest in magic history, particularly the cups and balls trick. And he actually had a collection of drawings, prints, paintings and cartoons that related to the cups and balls, as well as an original set of Hofsinger cups. He was a published author on magic, including producing this guide we're looking at today. But sadly, Bob passed away following a heart attack in 2005. And now we're going to take a stroll, much as Bob did, through St James's, through the side streets, the nooks and crannies, its main thoroughfare, Piccadilly. And you're going to hear tales of magicians and tricksters, the places they performed, both in years of yore and in the modern day. But I guess the first question is, how do you do a walking tour of London if your guide can't even leave his own flat because of the coronavirus lockdown? Well, hopefully the answer to that question is the magic of Google Street View. So this is the start point for our tour. The tour we're going to be doing is called Strolling in St James's, and the start location is Hyde Park Corner Tube Station. You can see on the map that we're starting our tour on the northwest part of Hyde Park Corner. So we begin our tour by leaving the tube station and moving just along here, and we get to our first stop, which is Apsley House, which used to be the home of the Duke of Wellington. And as Bob points out in the book, this is probably the most succinct address in London because it is number 1 London. The Duke was portrayed as a magician chasing Napoleon in a cartoon by Elijah in 1815. Up until this time it was Napoleon who was viewed as the great scammer, but in the image Wellington can be seen finding Napoleon underneath one of the cups in the cups and balls trick. In the 1720s, magician Isaac Fawkes performed at Hyde Park in a temporary fair. Isaac Fawkes was an English conjurer born around 1675 and he died in 1732. He's one of the earliest magicians to present conjuring as an entertainment outside the traditional fairground setting. A skillful promoter, he amassed a considerable fortune. He's known to have performed tricks with cards, eggs, corn, mice, birds and money. And one advertisement stated that he takes an empty bag, lays it on the table, turns it several times inside out, then commands 100 eggs out of it and several showers of real gold and silver. Then the bag, beginning to swell, several sorts of wild fowl run out upon the table. He throws up a pack of cards and causes them to be living birds flying around the room. So from Hyde Park, we're going to move in the direction of Piccadilly, and we've actually got a bonus stop here. So this is a location that didn't exist in Bob's original map. And to get there, we need to go actually into the underpass on the north side of Piccadilly. So these are pictures that were taken in the underpass, and you can actually see painted on the tiling of the wall is the Egyptian Hall. And you're going to learn a lot more about that as the tour goes on. But I think the photos were posted online by John Davenport of the Davenport family. So as we head along Piccadilly, we're in the vicinity of Hamilton Place and Down Street, and it was around here that Winstanley displayed some amazing hydraulics. Henry Winstanley was an English painter and engineer born in 1644. He was known for constructing the Eddystone Lighthouse, but he also designed a set of playing cards depicting major countries of the world in 1675. And he had a fascination with whimsical mechanisms of his own design and construction. In the 1690s, he opened a mathematical water theatre known as Winstanley's Waterworks on Piccadilly. It was an ingenious display of fireworks, hydraulic wonders and automata, and included the Barrel of Wonder, which served visitors hot and cold drinks from the same piece of equipment, which to me sounds a little bit like the magic kettle trick. Now, as we look along Down Street, you can see one of the secrets of this street is that on the left-hand side, there's a disused London Underground station. So this is Down Street, London Underground station. It was closed in 1934, but it was used during the Second World War by Winston Churchill in his war cabinet as a kind of underground bunker, and Churchill referred to it as the barn. Now, I'm not quite sure why Bob chose to put this in a tour about magic, but it is worth noting that Winston Churchill was something of a magic fan. Now, the legend goes that Churchill went for a dinner party with a group of friends, and there was a magician there by the name of Harry Green. And Harry Green performed a trick for Winston Churchill. The dinner was a pleasant, relaxing and welcome interlude to Churchill's hectic schedule, and eventually duty called and he realised he should head on to an evening session at Parliament. However, a friend suggested he wait just long enough to see Harry Green demonstrate a new card trick. The trick was Paul Curry's Out of This World. It involved Churchill guessing the colour of face-down playing cards and being correct every single time. The Prime Minister was astonished. After some thoughtful chewing of one of his famous cigars, Churchill leaned forward and asked to see the trick again. Green complied. Once again, Churchill was astonished. Between his insisting that the trick be performed again and again, 6 times in total, and mulling over its solution after each such performance, the hours slipped by. Finally, giving up, Churchill left to keep his belated appointment. Apparently, according to the reports, he arrived at Parliament at 2 a.m. in the morning. Now, within the magic fraternity, this trick has come to be known as the trick that fooled Churchill. Now from here, we're going to turn around. We're going to move back down to Piccadilly. At the bottom of the road, we turn left. And we're going to head up Piccadilly just a little bit, but we're interested in crossing over to the other side. And there you can see is Green Park. Now, on one side of Green Park, you've got Buckingham Palace, where the Queen lives. And on the other side, you've got Clarence House, which is where Prince Charles lives. And he's obviously relevant to us because he joined the Magic Circle. So as well as being heir to the throne, Prince Charles is an amateur magician, and he joined the Magic Circle in 1975. In fact, the cups and balls that he used as part of his examination are on display in the Magic Circle Museum. Charles is not the first Prince of Wales to favour magic. King Edward VII was something of an amateur magician too. Edward VII was friends with the famous English magician Charles Bertram, who gave him private lessons. He was a tough teacher, making the king do a dexterous sleight-of-hand move called the single-handed pass 90 times in a minute. It also seems the two had a striking resemblance both facially and in build. So here we've got a picture of the two of them. Bertram, the famous magician on the left, was often mistaken for the king, who's in the right-hand photo. And Edward VII once drolly noted, "It's a most curious thing that Mr. Bertram is always being taken for the King of England, but somehow, I can't think why, nobody mistakes me for Charles Bertram." I recently heard quite a good story about Edward VII. There was a time when an American magician, the great Raymond, came and performed for the king, and he was asked to do a card trick. So he spreads the deck and he's offering it round. He offers to the king to take a card. And the king kind of looks around and whispers to him, "Do you want me to take any special one?" So it seems the king was actually quite willing to act as a kind of assistant or stooge in the magician's act. And later in the act, while the performer was performing, the king leaned over and took the cards from him and shuffled it to make it even harder for him to do the trick, and then handed the deck back. But what the king had actually done is an expert false shuffle, so all the cards were exactly in the same order as they were before, which enabled the magician to complete the trick and look like he was a complete miracle worker. So yeah, so it seems that Edward was quite into his magic after all. So if we take another look at our map, you can see how we've moved up from Hyde Park via Down Street, and now we're at Green Park. Bob next instructs us to head a little bit further along Piccadilly, and then to turn left into Half Moon Street. And we go about halfway along Half Moon Street until we get to Fleming's Hotel. And this was the location of the John Salisse Luncheon Club. John Salisse was born in 1926. He was a former director of Marks & Spencer, and he was also a successful magician and ventriloquist who performed theatre shows in the UK and the US. A sophisticated performer with a dry sense of humour, one of his best-loved routines involved a vent doll which slowly falls apart. But he's perhaps best known for his comedy act with Francis the Duck. So from here we're going to head along to the end of Half Moon Street. And as we reach the corner, you can kind of make out a building on the opposite side of the road, just in the distance there. That's number 1 Curzon Street. And number 1 Curzon Street in the 70s was run by MI5 as one of the key MI5 buildings. There are actually 2 MI5 buildings on this street. And Bob jokes in the book that even though this is meant to be a top secret location, every London cab driver could tell you exactly where it was. But we're not going to go that way. We're going to turn left. We are going to head along Curzon Street, and we're going to get to Shepherd Market, which is quite a picturesque area of London. Although at one point it was a notorious red light district. But Shepherd Market, this space from here all the way to Park Lane, was the key location for London's Mayfair, which is actually the term where the region of London, the district of London, Mayfair, gets its name from. And it was during the Mayfair that Penkethman performed. William Penkethman was an English comic actor and theatre manager who performed both on stage and at fairs around the late 1600s and early 1700s. He died in 1725. He was regarded as a low comedian, and he often performed riding a donkey. So from here we're going to head back to Piccadilly. We're going to take a route along White Horse Lane. And back onto Piccadilly and then turn left. And we're just going to head up Piccadilly in the direction of St James's Street. So looking at the map, you can see how we've done our little tour of Mayfair, and now we're going to push on east to the top of St James's Street. And the reason this location is important is because this is actually the location that Hogarth used as the basis for one of his paintings, which is part of a Rake's Progress, painted in 1738. So William Hogarth was an English painter, printmaker, satirist, social critic and editorial cartoonist. He was born in 1697, died in 1764. The image we have at the moment is the one taken from a Rake's Progress, and in the background you can see St James's Palace. And Hogarth is known to magicians particularly for his portrayal of thimble rigging, or the shell game, a con-trick version of the cups and balls. You can make out 3 thimbles on the ground. This is apparently the earliest depiction of the thimble rig in a painting or picture. So from here we're going to continue down St James's Street, stopping off briefly at Jermyn Street, which is a location that Isaac Fawkes performed in around the 1720s. In 1723, William Hogarth satirised performances by Isaac Fawkes by presenting them as being simple entertainment. But Fawkes continued to entertain fashionable society until his death in 1732. Hogarth also included an image of Fawkes in his 1733 engraving of the 1732 Southwark Fair. In the busy image, Fawkes can be made out performing on the right-hand side. And we're just going to zoom in now so you can have a closer look. And then if we continue down a bit further, we get to number 29. And this is a location where Maelzel displayed automata, including the mechanical Turk. Johan Nepomuk Maelzel was born in 1772. He was a German inventor, engineer and showman, and he was best known for manufacturing a metronome and displaying the fraudulent mechanical Turk, which he had purchased from the Kempelen family, but we'll hear more about them later. Now we continue down St James's Street, to Economist Plaza. This used to be the Athenaeum Saloon of science, music and the arts. And in 1830, Ramo Samee performed here. Ramo Samee was an Indian juggler, sword swallower and fire eater. He came to England in 1819 and he lived here until his death in 1851. He is considered the first modern professional juggler in England. Yet when he died, he was so poor that his wife needed financial assistance just to have him buried. He had performed juggling feats in an all-white costume complete with flowing robes and a turban. He would perform a trick he called stringing the beads with the mouth, which is very similar to the needles trick, which was also performed by his troupe. He'd set fire to a piece of rope and he'd eat it, and he'd call this having his light dinner. So from here we're going to take a left onto Ryder Street and then a right into Bury Street. And it was here at number 30 that the famous French magician Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin was staying while he was performing at the St James's Theatre. Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin was born in 1805. He was a watchmaker, magician and illusionist. He's widely recognised as being the father of modern magic. He transformed magic from a pastime for the lower classes to an entertainment for the wealthy. While he was staying here in 1848, he performed at St James's Theatre, and I happen to have a copy of one of his posters. And we're going to continue down this road here, and we get to the auction house Christie's. And this is on our list because in 2004 they sold the oldest known oil painting of a magician. In 2004, this was the oldest known painting depicting a magician. It was painted on the surface of a wedding chest around 1460. But I'm reliably informed now that it's actually the second oldest painting depicting a magician. It was discovered and subsequently purchased by a German collector, Volker Huber, who actually knew our guide Bob Reed and published the book about Bob's collection of cups and balls. Now, opposite Christie's is Almack House, which used to be the Willis's Room, and this is a location where Frickel performed. Viljalba Frickel was a German magician born in 1818. He was self-taught and used numerous apparatus in his stage show. He showed higher magic, or apparent magic, and developed the manipulator style of magic relying on dexterity and sleight of hand, as well as developing the art of parlour magic. One of his main props was his inexhaustible top hat, from which 200 brass cups could be pulled. Now from here it's not too far to go to get to Angel Court, which is just here. In Angel Court there's a plaque commemorating St James's Theatre. St James's Theatre opened in 1835. It was never commercially successful and acquired a reputation as an unlucky theatre. It wasn't until 1879 that the theatre began to prosper. In 1850 the manager was John Henry Anderson, the Wizard of the North, who we'll hear about shortly. Now, as well as putting on plays including the premiere of Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest, it also ran variety shows including various magic acts such as Robert Houdin's. In 1950 it was managed by Laurence Olivier and Vivian Leigh, but despite an epic campaign of protest it was demolished in 1957. Now we're going to head back in the direction of St James's Street, and it was on the corner here at number 10 St James's Street that used to be St James's Bazaar. And John Henry Anderson performed here during his first visit to London in 1840. John Henry Anderson was a Scottish magician born in 1814. He is credited with bringing magic from street performances into theatres. Sir Walter Scott said to have given him the stage name the Wizard of the North. He was one of the earliest magicians to achieve a high level of world renown, and he is often credited as the first magician to pull a rabbit from a hat, and is also known for making the bullet catch famous, even though he didn't invent the illusion himself. Now you might think that various magicians around this period would be friends, but actually there was a lot of rivalry. Robert Houdin's mechanic Legrand would pirate Houdin's tricks and sell them on, and many of these illusions fell into the hands of the Wizard of the North. One of my favourite stories about John Henry Anderson was when he was touring in Boston in 1853, and he was doing a trick where he'd produce random alcoholic drinks for different members of the audience, so people might call out the name of a drink and he could produce it for them. They could have the drink. And this actually got him in trouble with the temperance movement in America, which was a movement opposed to the drinking of alcohol, and it led to a legal case against him. But anyway, speaking of America, we are going to head slightly further down St James's Street to a place called Pickering Place. And as we move down, you can kind of make it out. It's a little alleyway right here. This is Pickering Place, which leads to the Texas Legation, St James Place. A legation is a diplomatic mission that is headed by a lower-ranking official than an ambassador. Before joining the US, the independent Texas was a British ally. So next door to Pickering Place, you've got Rudd's, the famous wine merchant that was set up in 1676. And you've also got Locks, the famous hat makers, who used to sell top hats to magicians and are the creator of the bowler hat. The bowler hat, or billy cock, bob hat, bobbin or derby, is said to have been designed in 1849 by the London hat makers Thomas and William Bowler to fulfill an order placed by James Lock and Company of St James's, which had been commissioned to design a close-fitting, low-crowned hat to protect gamekeepers from low-hanging branches while on horseback. They'd previously worn top hats, which were knocked off easily and damaged. You may have noticed at the beginning of the video when I was showing some clips of Bob Reed that Bob would often wear a bowler hat when performing. Now it seems that Bob was actually quite a big fan of the bowler hat, to such an extent that at his funeral his good friend Peter Wentworth encouraged all the mourners to come wearing bowler hats as a tribute to Bob. So from here we're going to head down to the end of St James's Street. You can see St James's Palace in the background here. We're going to turn left, and just on the left hand side you can see Crown Passage, and if we head up Crown Passage we're going to get to the Red Lion pub. It was here at the Red Lion pub that Balducci exhibited automata in 1738. Now we're going to move along Pall Mall. On the right hand side you can see Marlborough House, which is where the Commonwealth Conference Centre is. But this used to be a royal residence, and in its day it's a location where Bertram performed and where Vanian performed as well. We've already met Charles Bertram, the King's twin. The famous English magician was born in 1853 and was the leading society entertainer of his day and responsible for the upper classes discovering conjuring. He became known as the Prince's Conjurer and the King's Conjurer. He performed many times at Maskelyne and Cook's entertainment shows at the Egyptian Hall, and he coined the catchphrase, "Isn't it wonderful?" So now as we head along Pall Mall, we reach a blue plaque on the side of the building, and this is to Nell Gwyn. Nell Gwyn was born in 1687. She was a celebrity figure of the Restoration and a comic actress on the English stage. She also became the long-term mistress of King Charles II. Now as we continue along Pall Mall you can see these carved figures outside number 80. And this was the former residence of the famous quack Dr. Graham. Dr. James Graham was a Scottish showman, a proponent of electrical cures and a pioneer in sex therapy. He was born in 1745. He used fresh flowers, a pair of turtle doves and automata to create the desired therapeutic effect in his celestial bed in his Pall Mall premises. So as we continue further along Pall Mall we're going to get to number 87, which is now the headquarters of the RAC, the Royal Automobile Club. And in 1802 this venue was used for waxworks, and in 1813 they had performances from Indian jugglers. The Indian jugglers were also known to perform at Carlton House at the junction of Waterloo Place. Now from the RAC we're going to head along Pall Mall a little bit further. We're going to turn right at Waterloo Place and then head down to Carlton House Terrace, and on the left hand side head down a little bit further we get to where number 24 would have been. It's not there anymore, but we can see where it would have been. And this is another location where Evanian performed for London's upper classes. Evanian, or Harry Evans, was born in 1832 and he was a conjurer, ventriloquist and humorist. He performed for various members of the royal family, including Queen Victoria and the Prince of Wales, later Edward VII, and Princess Alexandra, and that enabled him to use the term the Royal Conjurer. He was also a collector of Victorian entertainment ephemera and had an interest in the history of magic. Evanian's substantial collection is now held by the British Library in London. So from Carlton House Terrace we're going to move back the way that we came, back to Waterloo Place, just around here, and just over Pall Mall. We'll stop here for a moment. Bob points out that the only remaining remnants of magic in this area now is a statue of a lady with linking rings. Oh, actually this is the Crimea War Memorial. So if we take a quick look at the map, we can see that we've headed down from St James's Street, past Christie's, onto Pall Mall, taken in Carlton House Terrace, and made it to Lower Regent Street. We're now going to move up to Waterloo Place, which is just up here, and this is a location where Poletti, Hurkat, Robert Ganthony, and Colonel H.J. Sargent all performed at different times. Cavaliere Antonio Poletti performed in London in the 1850s as the Roman illusionist. His experiments including the prolific scarf, the bottle of Tantalus, the dancing egg, the magic hat, and the gun trick. R.D. Chater was born in 1836. He was better known as Hurkat, an anagram of his surname. He was a British magician and writer, famous for the cremation illusion. He was also the inventor and proprietor of the illusion The Mystery of She. Robert Ganthony was a ventriloquist and author of Practical Ventriloquism in 1904. Harry J. Sargent, originally Henry Sargent Jones, was an American actor, theatre manager, agent and magician who was born in 1843. He promoted several famous actresses of the era, as well as a series of boxing matches. He served in the New York State Militia in the American Civil War as a sergeant and sergeant major. In later life, when working as an illusionist, he styled himself as Colonel H.J. Sargent, Wizard of the South. He died in 1896 in poverty in Leeds, England. So from Waterloo Place, we're going to head north up Regent Street, and then we reach the other end of Jermyn Street where we were earlier. We're going to turn left into Jermyn Street, and just up here on the right hand side is the Jermyn Theatre, and this is a venue where lots of contemporary magicians have performed. Various people from Peter Wardell, Joe Atmore, Jay Fortune, Richard Lee, Michael Vincent, Paul Zenon. It was also here that Paul Daniels performed his Max Malini tribute act. Paul Daniels was born in 1938 and achieved international fame as a British television magician. A brilliant showman, he was an active member of the Magic Circle until his death in 2016. Paul's tribute to Max Malini, a famous Polish magician born in 1873, provided a vast volume of tricks from the classic Malini repertoire, including a card stab, egg bag, bill and lemon, and matrix with sugar cubes. So we're going to continue along Jermyn Street. On the left-hand side, you've got Rowley's Restaurant, which used to be the original Walls the Butchers, as in Wall sausages. And we continue along and then turn right into Church Place. And if we go up here, we get back onto Piccadilly, where we turn left. And in front of us, you have the British Academy for Film and Television Arts, BAFTA. And this location used to be Prince's Hall, and it was here that Verbeck performed. Eugene Verbeck was a French magician born in 1844. He arrived in the UK around 1885, where he performed a second sight routine with Mademoiselle Marguerite. He was later employed by P.T. Barnum. He would multiply money, do the torn and restored card fired into a bottle, and perform the diminishing cards and do sleights with cork balls. So now if we continue along Piccadilly, we're going to get to the famous store Fortnum and Mason. And most people just walk by at this level. What we're going to do is to take a look up. And if we look up, you can see the automata clock. And on the hour, Mr. Fortnum and Mr. Mason come out. And we're going to have a look at that because I've managed to find a video of it. So let's see. So from here we're going to move across Duke Street, and Duke Street was the home to amateur magician Isambard Kingdom Brunel in 1843. Although famous as an engineer, Brunel almost died in 1843 when he accidentally swallowed a golden coin as part of a magic trick for his children. He was trying to make a gold sovereign disappear from his mouth and reappear in his ear. So from here we're going to head further along Piccadilly, and eventually we get to a place called Egyptian House. An Egyptian house is on the spot where the Egyptian hall used to be. Now, nowadays, this building's a business, an office block, but on a normal business day, you can slip inside, and if you go through the front door and just take a look on the left-hand side, and what do we find? It's a plaque and a framed photo. So in 1985, the Magic Circle installed a plaque here to commemorate England's home of mystery. The Egyptian Hall opened in 1812, 60 years before Maelzel and Cook came to London and made it famous as a magic venue. It was built by William Bullock to house his collection, and in the early days it was known variously as the London Museum, Bullock's Museum, the Egyptian Museum, and the Egyptian Hall. Bullock was primarily interested in natural history, but his collection of artefacts was eclectic. He chose an Egyptian style as that was the fashion in 1812. In 1819, Bullock sold his natural history collection and turned the Egyptian Hall into an entertainment complex with a wide range of shows. Many great magicians performed here over the years, including Alexander Herman, de Colter, Tobin, the Fakir of Ulu, to name just a few. Its facade influenced the design of the exterior of the Magic Circle's headquarters in Euston. You can see there are two statues. These are the Egyptian deities Osiris and Isis. In Egyptian mythology, Isis brought Osiris back from the dead, albeit for a day, making her one of the deities associated with magic. The original statues are currently located in the London Museum at the Barbican. They're not on display, but instead they're hidden away somewhere in the car park. Inside the hall was a 250-seater theatre. The seats in the first 4 rows were well upholstered and comfortable. Further back they were a bit more Spartan, and the cheaper seats were the benches up in the gallery. There was a small stage on which incredible magic acts were performed. There would normally be performances at 8 p.m. every evening, with the possible exception of Sundays, and matinees at 3 p.m. on Mondays, Wednesdays and Saturdays. Maelzel and Cook had been professional entertainers, mainly touring the provinces, for 8 years. The Egyptian Hall was a high-class venue, and their hope was that if they had a season there, it would look good on their publicity. As it turned out, they stayed there for a staggering 31 years. Maelzel and Cook presented their tricks and illusions in the form of sketches, and they claimed this made their shows different from their competition. John Neville Maelzel, born in 1839, was a stage magician and the inventor of the pay toilet lock and other Victorian-era devices. It is from the toilet door lock he devised, which is coin-operated, that we derive the term to spend a penny. An original masculine lock is in the Magic Circle collection. He worked with George Alfred Cook and David Devant, and many of his illusions are still performed today. Now, as we turn away from Egyptian House, over the road we can see Burlington Arcade. We're just going to head over that way. It was at number 62 that James Izzard had his magic shop. Now, if we continue through Burlington Arcade, we reach Burlington Gardens. From Burlington Arcade, we're going to move along to Savile Row. Now, Savile Row, as many people know, is principally famous for bespoke gentlemen's tailoring. And there have been a number of magicians who have had specially made suits on Savile Row, including Channing Pollock and Johnny Hart. Channing Pollock was an American magician and film actor. With movie star looks, he was recognised as one of the most sophisticated magicians in the world. He was known for producing doves from thin air. By the mid-50s, Pollock was unsurpassed in his field and had spawned many imitators, but his act was unique, and he always made a point of never smiling until he was taking his final bow. Johnny Hart was a suave and sophisticated British stage magician born in 1943. He was the first recipient of the Magic Circle's Young Magician of the Year award at the age of 17. He performed an act immaculately attired in white tie and tails and produced coloured budgies. But it was here at 8 Savile Row that von Kempelen exhibited his chess-playing automata in 1783. Johann Wolfgang Ritter von Kempelen was born in 1734. He was an Austro-Hungarian nobleman, a scholar, an architect, a polyglot, and an inventor. Von Kempelen was best known for his fraudulent chess-playing mechanical Turk, a wondrous piece of false automata. In 1770, in the Imperial Court of Vienna, von Kempelen unveiled the most extraordinary and baffling device. The mechanical Turk was a life-size clockwork figure dressed in Eastern costume that somehow could play world-class chess. It became an immediate sensation. For decades, this incredible automaton confounded audiences across Europe and America. It trounced grandmasters, outwitted Napoleon, defeated Benjamin Franklin, and is even said to have stopped Catherine the Great from cheating. Von Kempelen never truly claimed it could play chess. Instead, he said it was a very ordinary piece of mechanism, a bagatelle whose effects appeared so marvellous only from the boldness of the conception and the fortunate choice of the methods adopted for promoting the illusion. The reality was that the mechanical Turk concealed a skilled chess player hidden deep inside its inner workings. We're now going to head back down Savile Row, turn right and head in the direction of Burlington Arcade again. But we're going to pass Burlington Arcade and head straight down to Old Bond Street. And on Old Bond Street we turn right, and we're going to head up Bond Street from Old Bond Street into New Bond Street. And eventually we reach the crossroads of Conduit Street and New Bond Street. So we've headed along Jermyn Street, along Piccadilly, through Burlington Arcade, to Savile Row, and then on to Bond Street, and finally we've reached here, number 23, Bond Street. So behind me you can see a Russell and Bromley shoe shop. This is number 23, New Bond Street, and before this used to be a performance venue. And in 1814, Giardelli performed a fire-defying act, and in 1817, Manito, the genius dog, used to pick playing cards. Josephine Girardelli was known as the Queen of Fire Eaters. She was born in the 1780s in Italy, and an active performer in the early 1800s. She could swallow red-hot objects without pain or harm. She'd rinse her mouth with nitric acid without ill effect. She'd then spit it onto iron, where it would eat through the metal. She'd also fill her mouth with boiling oil, causing a small fire when she spat it out. She'd heat up metal objects and then press them against her skin. Manito, the Wonder Dog, was a 19th century stage act. Manito was such a celebrity that he listed the Prince Regent and the Duke of York amongst his fans. The intelligent dog could perform tricks, do sums, and spell using lettered cards. He started his career in Paris, where the Parisians would bet bonbons and cakes on the outcome of his games. His master was Signor Castelli, an Italian who spoke no English. The pair are often seen walking in London with Castelli chatting away to the dog as if holding a conversation. Manito was also brave, being awarded an honorary medal by the Royal Humane Society for rescuing a drowning woman. So once again, we're going to turn around, we're going to head south, and then turn right onto Grafton Street and left onto Albemarle Street. And this is the home of the Royal Institution. The Royal Institution is well known for being an educational institution, educating people in science, but it's also a venue where a number of magicians have performed, many of them quite recently. So we've had performers like Billy Kidd, magician and teacher Chris Wardle, who presents the magic of mathematics, the psychologist and magician Dr. Gustav Kuhn, professor of public understanding of psychology and magician Richard Wiseman, and Steve Truglia. So Steve Truglia was a British magician and stuntman. He was formerly in 2-1 SAS reserves and did stunts in 2 James Bond movies. Steve regularly performed his card sharp show to sell out audiences at the Royal Institution. Sadly, Steve died in 2016. So from the Royal Institution, we're going to head south and then turn left onto Stafford Street. And at the corner here is number 33 Old Bond Street. And this used to be John Mitchell's ticket agency. John Mitchell was born in 1806 and was a theatre and music agent. He was the founder of Bond Street Ticket Agency, and he also ran St James's Theatre in King Street from 1842. He had a fondness for international performers and presented German magicians amongst others. So from Old Bond Street we're going to head back onto Piccadilly, turn left, and we're going to head all the way along to number 22. And this used to be known as St James Rooms, and various performers performed here. Ramo Samee, Bertram, Henry Novra, Catafelto, Philip Astley, and even Alexander Herman. Alexander Herman was born in 1844. He was a French magician and better known as Herman the Great. One of my favourite stories about Herman the Great was when he was walking down, I think it was Regent Street, and he deliberately picked somebody's pocket. He picked a handkerchief out of a guy's pocket, and deliberately doing this in front of a couple of policemen who saw what he was doing, and then he lifted somebody's pocket watch. And the policeman came over to arrest him because they thought he was a pickpocket. But he was able to show his pockets were empty. But when they checked the policeman's pockets, they found a handkerchief in one pocket and a pocket watch in the other. And it was at that point they noticed that one of the policemen had lost his badge. And that was found in the pocket of one of the people that Alexander had already picked the pocket of. Henry Novre was a British magician active from 1840 to the 1860s. He went by the names of Mons Henri, but also was known as the Wizard of the West. Christian William Anthony Catafalto was a Prussian conjurer, scientific lecturer and quack. He was born in 1743 and he performed in London from 1780 to 1784. The widespread flu epidemic of 1782 made him famous as a quack when he used a solar microscope to show images of microbes he believed were the cause. These insects provided him with the catchphrase, "Wonders, wonders, wonders," which often headed his advertisements. He lectured in Piccadilly on electricity, magnetism, styangraphy, palinchikism, and the caprimantic arts. All three were made-up expressions to impress an audience. He was also known to perform magic tricks with a black cat that he advertised as being evil. He claimed to have launched the first hot air balloon 15 years before the Montgolfier brothers, and claimed to be the greatest natural philosopher since Isaac Newton. Philip Astley was born in 1742, and he was an English equestrian and is regarded as the father of modern circus. He integrated entertainment that included domesticated animals, acrobats, and clowns. His circus was so popular that he was invited to perform for Louis XV of France in Versailles. And it's here on Piccadilly that we've got another kind of bonus place to visit, which didn't appear on Bob's map because it didn't exist then. And we're going to head this way, and it's actually right here, the Meridian Hotel. The Meridian Hotel is now home to the Maskelyne and Cook Bar, which is named after John Neville Maskelyne and George Cook from the Egyptian Hall, who we met earlier in the tour. The newly opened venue is where a number of Magic Circle members have residencies now or teach masterclasses, and the sorts of performers we're talking about are people like Laura London, Brendan Rodriguez, Henry White, Tony Middleton, and Dr. Will Houston. And as we near the end of our tour, we get to Piccadilly Circus, and you can see at the end of Piccadilly you've got what was the Swan and Edgar department store building, and at one point this used to be a Virgin Megastore. And this is relevant to us because Virgin Megastores were owned by Richard Branson, who's quite a famous magic enthusiast, and he's had performers like Jamie Raven and Catherine Mills perform for different Virgin events in the past. So Piccadilly Circus is the heart of London's theatreland. And as you'd expect, with all these theatres around, there must have been a number of different magic performances here over the years. So from here, we're going to head in the direction of Piccadilly Theatre. Okay, you can see behind me, this is Piccadilly Theatre. And it was here in 1983 that there was a production called Y, which starred an up-and-coming performer called Arturo Brachetti. The Italian performer Arturo Brachetti is now considered to be the world's best quick change artist. He was a co-host of the 1990 TV show The Best of Magic, and he's described in the Guinness Book of World Records as the quickest and most prolific quick change artist in the world. Now we're going to head back onto Piccadilly Circus. And it's this spot right here where Penn and Teller performed a version of their trick, the world's most expensive card trick. So in this version of Penn and Teller's world's most expensive card trick, Penn had a spectator pick a card, and then back in the studio, Teller appears to use an elaborate computer program to determine the card and present it on one of the big screen displays right over Piccadilly Circus.
Then the street, come on, concentrate. It's the four of spades. Is that right? Four of spades.
Now, having met two Princes of Wales earlier on our tour, it kind of seems fitting that the last place we're going on this tour is the Prince of Wales Theatre. And that's really close to Piccadilly. We're just going to move down the road a little bit. And here we are. And this is a location where a number of magicians have performed. So, for example, Tommy Cooper performed here in 1959 as a supporting act to Shirley Bassey. Tommy Cooper was born in 1921. He was a legendary British comedy magician. He's widely known for wearing a red fez and his lumbering appearance at 6 foot 5 inches tall, which is 1 metre 96 centimetres. In 1940, he was called up as a trooper in the Royal Horse Guards and he served there for 7 years. He joined Montgomery's Desert Rats in Egypt and he became a member of a Navy, Army and Air Force institution's entertainment party where he developed his magic act. One evening in Cairo, during a sketch in which he was supposed to be in costume that required a pith helmet, having forgotten the prop, Cooper reached out and borrowed a fez from a passing waiter. This got a huge laugh, and Cooper wore the fez whenever he performed after that. One of my favourite Tommy Cooper stories was told to me by a friend of mine who was studying Arabic in Cairo. And I went to visit him, and he was telling me how the local vendors who would sell fezes would often ask him, why is it that when a Frenchman wants to buy a fez, they try it on, if they like it, they buy it? And when a German wants to buy a fez, they try it on, if they like it, they buy it. And when an American wants to buy a fez, they put it on, if they like it, they buy it. But when a British person buys a fez, that's different. When a British person buys a fez, they pick it up, they put it on, and then they go, just like that. Why does that happen? So, well, it was told to me as a true story. Who knows? But here we are still at the Prince of Wales Theatre, and there are other performers here as well. So Billy Macomb, for example, he performed here in 1951 in support of Bob Hope. Billy Macomb was a British-born American magician and comedian born in 1922. He was a regular performer right up until his 80s when he was the opening act for The Amazing Jonathan. He's particularly well known in the magic fraternity for his linking finger rings routine and his coin and bottle routine. Another performer who performed at the Prince of Wales Theatre was Paul Daniels. He was here in 1980 to 1982 and again in 1994. In his run in the 80s, Paul was performing over a period of 14 months, which is the longest running magic show in the history of the West End. Now, given all the magic you've seen in this part of London over this tour, that's a pretty impressive feat. So back on the map to recap where we've been. We started at Hyde Park Corner. We headed up Piccadilly, then onto Half Moon Street, around Shepherd Market. We went to the top of St James's Street to Christie's, along Pall Mall, into Jermyn Street, back onto Piccadilly, to the Egyptian House, through Burlington Arcade, up to Savile Row, onto Bond Street, then to the Royal Institution, back to Piccadilly, into Piccadilly Circus, to Piccadilly Theatre, and finally the Prince of Wales Theatre. And that, dear viewer, brings us to the end of our walking tour, Strolling in St James. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been quite an adventure making this thing, as I'm sure you can imagine. If you did spot any mispronunciations, any errors, or just have any comments in general, you'll find my email at the end of this video. Please do drop me a line. Feel free to do so anytime you want. Thank you for staying with this. I do hope you're surviving the whole coronavirus nonsense that's going on. And perhaps at some point in the future, we can do a tour like this for real. Thanks a lot. And take care. I've had a few comments on my tie, which I will show you. This was a gift for Christmas from my mother, and it's rather appropriate. So if you take a look. Thanks, Mum. Was that your card? Here you go. Take care. Bathroom 3,